It's really good to see so many friends here. I see the names popping up in the chat group. As Will said, I'm relatively new to the Natural Heritage Trust, having been appointed just about exactly a year ago to this position, but I'm certainly not new to parks or to the parks family. I came to the NHT after 13 years with the Public Affairs Bureau at State Parks, and have worked closely with many of you who I think are on this call on a lot of the projects that Will mentioned with PTNY over the years. I mean, this has just been a partnership that, in fact, has really inspired me over the last decade, and was one big reason why I was so excited and honored to take this new position, because it's just yet another way to continue to foster and develop what I think is really foundational to the park system, and that's the partnerships that support the work that we all do on behalf of the places that we love so much. So, I have a presentation to sort of give you a basic history and background of the Natural Heritage Trust. The NHT, as we're known, is a term or an organizational name that people hear a lot, but may not know a lot about us exactly in terms of how we're structured and the kind of work that we do, that we've done for more than 50 years now. But so I'm going to, let's see if I can share. Oh, that's probably didn't share, right? Let's see. Just trying to get my full screen up so you don't have to see the Okay, can you all see that? Okay, good. Okay, good. So the way I'm going to organize my talk today is again to give you sort of a brief organizational history and overview of the trust, talk a little bit about our fundraising and development structure as it is now, and some priorities that I have moving forward on development. Overview some program highlights of the kinds of projects that we've worked on over the years and are currently working on, both with our agency partners and all our partners out in the field. And then talk a little bit more about how we can and do and could collaborate with you as friends groups in the park regions. So starting with our history, the NHT was created as a public benefit corporation by the New York State Legislature in 1968. Our statute is established in Article 55 of the Arts and Cultural Affairs Law. We were created a year after the U.S. government federally chartered the National Parks Foundation in 1967. And philanthropist and chair of the New York State Council of Parks from 1963 to 1973, Lawrence Rockefeller was involved in the creation of both organizations. So in many ways, we feel that the NHT was envisioned to be to New York State what the National Parks Foundation is to the National Park Service, a mechanism by which private citizens can directly support public lands. So this idea that there is a private-public partnership on behalf of public lands, both nationally and in New York State, is sort of built into the very foundation of the system that we all work in today. Our statutory mission is to serve as a focal point for the receipt and administration of private gifts, devices, and bequests of real and personal property donated to further conservation, outdoor recreation, and historic preservation purposes, and advance public understanding, revitalization, and restoration of New York's waterfronts. The NHT has both government and IRC nonprofit status. As a public benefit corporation, we are subject to the New York State Public Authorities Law, and all donations to the NHT are tax deductible. So we are a public benefit corporation, nonprofit organization. We are a unique hybrid. There's not a lot of similar entities in New York State, but we do report to the New York State Public Authorities Law, and all of our annual reporting is transparent through that process. As established in our authorizing statute, the board of directors of the NHT consists of the chair of the State Council of Parks, the commissioner of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, the commissioner of DEC, and the secretary of state. So our current 2021 board directors are listed here. That's who I report to. We meet quarterly here in Albany generally. This may be a little difficult to see, but just to give you sort of a sense of how our reporting structure works at the NHT. So again, on the blue side here, this is the office of the trust itself. So I report again to the board of directors. We have a small staff based in the OPRHP offices here in Albany. I'm an executive director and a CFO and some admin and a development staff. So we work here, we report to the board of directors. And then we work in sort of parallel partnership with the agency and executive staff of our 3 agency partners. So that's at Parks, DEC, and Department of State. So the funds held in the NHT enhance the mission of our 3 agency partners by supporting special programming, events, operational and project costs, and program staff employee costs. Revenue sources include donations, sponsorship, program fees, grants, and state-funded contracts. And I'll get into a little more detail on the types of programs that we work with our partners on, but this just gives you a general sense. So at state parks, we work on a wide variety of facility-based and specific program and project support, as well as agency-wide historic preservation, stewardship, park planning, and with the Niagara River Greenway as another partner of ours in the Western New York area. And with DEC, our focus has been generally more on agency-wide programs on habitat improvement, the Ocean and Great Lakes program, and a program specific to the Hudson River Natural Resources Damages Program. And again, at the Department of State, our work is focused on funding that we administer basically some staff contracts for the South Shore Estuary, consistency review, and oceans and Great Lakes. So those are the general types of programs that we support in these variety of ways with our 3 agency partners. Probably by far our greatest and most in-depth partnership is with Parks, and I'll get more into that as this presentation goes on. Some finance key points about how we are set up as a fiscal organization. The NHT is self-funded for purposes of administration. Funds are not appropriated by the governor or the legislature. We do not receive any direct state funding. NHT's accounting system is independent from the state's financial system, and we follow the accounting requirements put out by the Government Accounting Standards Board. So we are an independent organization and self-funded in terms of finance. As just a point of interest, in early 2021, one of the very first actions I was able to oversee as executive director is the updating of our investment policy to incorporate ESG, environmental, social, and governance criteria into our investment decisions, helping to ensure our fiscal stewardship reflects the environmental and social values inherent in our mission. So I was proud to be able to do that as one of my first actions as executive director. The types of funds that we hold fall into 2 basic the types of funds that we manage fall into 2 basic categories. First, and by far the largest, is our fiduciary fund. Sort of first and foremost, the NHT is a fiduciary organization. So these are the funds that we hold for endowments, donations, grants, programs, projects, and program staff. So as the fiduciary, the NHT holds the funds and makes disbursements as directed by its agency partners in accordance with applicable law, rule, or policy. So all of those funds that we take in a variety of ways, again, from grants, donations, endowments, special project contracts with our agency partners. We hold those and distribute them based on agreements in partnership with our agency. That's currently about $60 million in that trust. The trust is in a pretty impressive and largest fiscal state that we've been in our history. So we're proud to say that at this point. And also I want to underscore here that we don't budget those funds. They are held for our agency partners. So all distributions are based on agreements and program priorities with them. These are not funds that we would release independently of work with our partners. And then we hold a general fund. This is where our admin and operating funds come from. These are held to support administrative operations, including the bookkeeping, accounting, finance. Again, we are independent from the state budget system, so all of those functions are done internally here, organizationally. The general fund budget is supported by interest on the fiduciary fund accounts, our endowment investment fees, and grant and admin staff contract fees. So our operating budget is approximately $1 million annually. So it's that $1 million that supports the $60 million in trust that we hold in the fiduciary fund. So moving on, and I'm happy to take questions about that as we get toward the end, or but moving on to focus on our fundraising and development. I mean, the nonprofit side of the trust is where we are most active and looking to continue to be most active as we support the work being done in the field by our partners. So to facilitate private investment in New York State parks, we use our 501c3 status and our ability to accept restricted gifts to increase donation potential. We solicit and manage donations from individuals, foundations, corporate donors, nonprofit grantors, and others. Funds raised by the NHT can be restricted to specific purposes, facilities, or programs, or could be unrestricted to support the mission of the organization or agency partners. And most individual donations that we receive are directed specifically to a state park facility. A lot of grants that we receive may be directed toward programs or capital projects that are ongoing. There's a wide variety of ways that we receive and accept donations, but for the most part, if they're not restricted, they're at least targeted to a specific project, program, or facility. And we work with both our agency partners and other public and private entities, nonprofits, and friends groups that share mission compatible goals and purposes. It's written into our statute that we can establish partnerships sort of broadly to advance this sort of shared mission that we have on behalf of public lands. So the types of public and private partnerships, just a little bit more detail here. Endowments and major gifts are sort of a large part of what we manage on the philanthropic side. We manage over $30 million in 13 separate long-term investments and endowment accounts. These are restricted to the endowment, the specific property in general or program that the endowment was established for. And we continue to actively expand our endowment portfolio. We receive support from a wide array of foundations, trusts, and nonprofit organizations. In some instances, the NHT receives annual distributions from entities with funding dedicated for the benefit of specific parks and facilities. As part of our overall mission, we build and maintain partnerships with a wide variety of friends groups and other mission congruent groups. And we collaborate in a number of ways, including acting as a fiscal agent, or in some situations, we receive funds raised by the friends in order to support a specific park or site. I'll get into a little bit more detail on this a little bit later. And statewide programming, agencies, initiatives, and collaborations. So we provide support to our partners by soliciting and securing public and private funding via grants, program income, and other resources to enhance the agency's abilities to carry out their respective missions. In terms of fundraising, we raised about $24 million since 2018. So we have a fairly robust fundraising program here at the Trust. We continue to focus on this. And again, these are the various ways we do that, soliciting and managing donations from individuals, foundations, and corporate donors and nonprofits. And again, funds can be raised for restricted to specific purposes or be unrestricted. and we work with a wide variety of partners in this fundraising, in our fundraising initiatives. NHT managed philanthropy is growing. Careful financial stewardship, again, our role as fiduciary is our primary role. So we work very hard to be responsible stewards of those funds that we hold, how we manage them from an investment point of view, and how we program them with our partners. So we are continuing to see growth in contributions and gifts. And just to give you an idea, the support by dollar amount foundation grants comprise the largest part of our philanthropic portfolio, with corporate and individual donors contributing as well. The market value growth of our NHT endowments has grown significantly over the last several years. Since 2009, the trust has added 11 endowments to our portfolio with a, so now the total value of the 13 that we hold is approximately $31 million, a growth of over 300% since 2010. This is a story that's fairly common now because of the strength of the stock market and foundation endowment held investments. But we, again, are proud to sort of hold these funds and program them with our partners and be able to play this role to parks in particular. So the NHT is expanding its development program with a particular focus on outreach about who we are and boosting that sort of individual levels of support. And although, you know, the majority of our fundraising portfolio comes from larger philanthropic gifts or foundation grants, we have a robust small donor database and participation in our fundraising efforts. So we are working to make our mission more publicly known and get our profile out there as the charitable partner to New York State Parks. In about 2 months ago, we launched our very first independent website, again, to help us raise our profile as the charitable partner to New York State's public lands. We've modernized our online donation platform. We're expanding donor outreach to increase retention rate, and we continue to work with agency partners in a more strategic way to identify programs and projects with high potential for private support. So we directly support projects and programs that enhance state park facilities and expand access to outdoor recreation and environmental education, preserve historic and cultural assets, and protect natural resources. And I just wanted to run through a few slides here to give you an idea of what those projects and programs are like and what they could be like if there was new partnerships in the future to work on. So one exciting project we've been a partner on is the Autism Nature Trail at Letchworth State Park. This campaign started about 7 years ago. We were not involved at the very beginning. The NHT came in about 2 years ago, I believe, as the fundraising and fiduciary partner, fiscal agent partner to the ANT, to build this completely privately funded trail that's designed to allow visitors with autism and other developmental disabilities to explore new activities and skills in the park. To date, the campaign has raised about $3.4 million of a total $3.7 million budget, which includes a generous endowment for maintenance, operations, and programming. So once the trail opens, which is imminent, we are planning ribbon cutting as we speak, then the programming and operations will transfer to the ANT organization to manage, but we will continue to hold the endowment and continue to work as a fundraising partner to raise funds for the endowment for the maintenance and operations of this facility moving forward. We're very excited to see this one come to fruition. Ladders to the Outdoor. This is an extension of the New York State Parks Connect Kids to Parks program, aimed at connecting to the next generation and promoting and supporting outdoor recreation and outdoor recreation skill development, particularly among underserved communities in the state. We have partnered with the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation in Western New York to launch a Ladders to the Outdoor program in Buffalo, in the Buffalo area, where there are now programs in place at 5 state parks in Western New York, and we continue to fundraise to start this program up in other areas of the state. This is an example of a program where we at the Trust are doing more aggressive outreach on our own to solicit grants and private funding to work with parks to implement this program at the facility level. The bike library at Shirley Chisholm State Park in New York City is another example of a completely privately fundraised program, and we have partnered with parks to provide this program, which offers free bike loans to visitors to Shirley Chisholm State Park and accepts donations of bikes that are available to loan and ride throughout the park. Through a variety of grants and foundation support, we are supporting all aspects of this program, including the staff, the maintenance staff, the bike technicians, and the director of the program, as well as the equipment costs, the marketing, and all of those things affiliated with it. So we work, again, in partnership with the park staff that implement the program at the facility. We hold the funds, manage the grants, and the staff for this program are on the NHT payroll. So that's another example of how intensive our partnership can be on programs and projects in the parks. Just to give you an example of a program with one of our other agency partners, the DEC Campership program has, this is a program we've done for quite a long time with DEC. This allows individuals to support camperships, which enable students who may not otherwise be able to afford camp to spend a week participating in one of DEC's intensive summer camp, overnight summer camp programs. So this is one of those programs that we receive a lot of individual online donations for to support individual campers or the campership program in general. So this is an example of a fundraising effort that we can do with our partners. We've again partnered with the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation. We have several grants with this foundation. It's been a remarkable partnership over the last several years on Western New York Trails and Empire State Trail Gateway projects, as well as several more things to come. These are all focused on Western New York projects. That's the catchment area for this particular foundation. But we administer here at the NHT. We are the applicant of and the administrator for the grants that we receive and hold for projects that happen in state parks, or in the case of the Empire State Trail Gateways, with the Empire State Trail at Hudson River Greenway. So we work with our partners to implement and spend those funds on these projects. So with friends groups in the NHT, those were all just examples of the ways that we act as a fiscal agent, as a program supporter, as a fundraiser, and as the fiduciary to implement specific projects and programs at parks and DEC facilities across the state. And in all of those, there's the potential, or there's already currently an opportunity to work with friends groups and other partners. I mean, as you all well know, many of these larger projects and programs depend on a community of partners to support them. So we engage at all of those different kinds of levels, and we can work with friends groups both to support ongoing fundraising initiatives for particular projects and programs at parks, or we can start something new and be a partner with you along the way. So in my mind, the most effective ways to collaborate is one, on project identification and support. And this really is about working with the park site and region on an ongoing basis to work together on identifying which projects have the greatest potential for fundraising support, or that may not otherwise happen without that kind of public-private partnership, and then how we can all work together to raise funds and support something new happening. Grant opportunities are another way to collaborate. The NHT often is the applicant for grants, because there are many nonprofit organizations and foundations that won't give to state agencies directly. So for our agency partners, we are the applicant and can hold the funds and administer the funds. That can be true. That can be a relationship we have with a friends group too. If the friends group doesn't have the capacity to apply for a grant or administer it, then we can act as the applicant and then engage in an agreement or partner agreement with the park and the Friends group to implement the funding. Again, partnering on fundraising campaigns, we've talked about that. That's something that's always a potential to do. And the NHT can act as fiscal agent support for Friends groups. We've done this in some instances where a Friends group doesn't have the capacity to set up its own 501c3 status, or isn't taking in those kinds of funds in that way. So we can manage that way. More often, we are actually the recipient of Friends donations to help a park program or a park support, but there's lots of different ways this could happen. This is always about ongoing conversation and communication about the best ways to work together at your facilities level with us and the park to advance a project or a program. So I don't know if I went over or if that's just about right, but I'm happy to have this conversation with you, or if there's any specific questions anyone had through my slides, I'm happy to answer those or talk more. There's my contact information there too, so please at any time, and please visit our new website too. I'm eager to hear feedback on that and sign up for our new newsletter, and there's all kinds of stuff going on there.
Absolutely. Well, Sally, thank you very much. I never doubted, but I fully expected it to be a really clear and concise explanation of, NHT, what you all do, the background, sort of in your vision of where you're going. So I learned a few things. I'm guessing most of our participants did as well. And so I appreciate that clarity. It's really helpful. Everyone who registered for tonight's workshop submitted questions in advance. Luckily, many of the questions are similar. So hopefully we can go through a couple of questions I'm going to pitch to you momentarily here, and then a lot of folks will feel like their questions are being answered, and then we'll kind of chip away at a few of them. So if that's okay, I'll just start fielding you some questions. All right. So I'm going to kind of pick up on one thing that you just touched on here, particularly in terms of like grant opportunities or collecting funds for a Friends group or something like that. Can you tell me a little bit, or tell us, I should say, a little bit about, are there criteria that a Friends group needs to meet to qualify in a partnership with you? They had to have a certain budget, they had to have staff. Is there anything that you want to share in terms of that?
No, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, most Friends groups, as I think everyone here knows, and have an agreement already established with parks as the Friends agreement. So I think we would look to sort of ensure that there's that agreement in place with the agency as an agency partner, and then they've sort of become part of our partner community in that way. So there's no criteria in terms of, and we always work to ensure that we are aligned with our agency partner. So usually conversations happen with the regional director, the park manager, and then Friends group or other partners at that facility. But it's easy to think, it's a little easier to think about us in this perspective as being very project based, as opposed to more general. So we would probably be engaged with Friends groups at the point when there's a project that the park, the agency, the region would like to advance for public-private funding. So, and then we sort of work out together whose role fits best in terms of implementing that fundraising goal or that project goal.
Got it. So you would suggest, just for clarity's sake, if a Friends group has a specific project, that they've already worked it out with their park level staff, the regional director, and there's a consensus about, yes, this is a project that works for us and it's implementable, and then we'd move forward from there.
Correct. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
That makes sense. Great. Because that's the thing with Friends groups, as you know, and as we all experience, some are large, some are small, some are very active, some have small members. It's nice to have sort of a clear cut through line about how Friends could engage. Yeah. In terms of, NHT possibly applying for grants on behalf of a Friends group, it would be a similar process where the project had to be clearly outlined and roles identified, but does that project need to have a certain objective? Does the Friends group need to suggest, here are some funders we think that would make sense? Or is there a liaison? I mean, you don't have endless staff at NHT to
Correct.
send a
Yeah.
grant to everybody. So, talk
Yeah.
us through realistically about how that might play itself out.
Yeah, so I think, again, this is would probably be more project driven. So if there were a project of friends and the park have agreed they want to advance together, and it made more sense for the NHT to be an applicant for a grant than the friends group for whatever reason, whether it's easier to manage on the once the funding is received and it goes to the park. I mean, our funding generally would go back out to the agency or the park project. We don't, for instance, like we do not manage projects once. We don't manage we pay bills, we pay our agency partners, we don't manage the projects that directly. Once the funding is received, we hold the funds and then distribute. So it sort of depends on what, but if say the friends group were managing a project, it may make more sense for the friends group to be the applicant and take the funds directly and spend it. So again, it's just those decisions to be made in the capacity. We do have capacity to apply and hold funds. That may not be something a friends group wants to undertake, in which case we make more sense to be the applicant. Again, it's all just dependent on what the project and the process might be.
Got it. Okay. A couple of folks are asking to have your contact information redisplayed. You don't have to do that. We will be sending out Sally's contact information in the follow-up email. So don't worry. I have a suspicion you're going to get a flood of emails. But,
okay, good. Yeah, I do have a Parks email address, which is convenient. Yeah. So if everyone has that parks.ny.gov, they just need to remember my name. Yeah.
So just kind of digging one step further into this line of questioning, if you will, with nonprofits and particularly with grants, it seems as though everybody wants their little bit of the pot of money, right?
Yeah.
So, which is sort of par for the course in some ways. What is NHT's? Does NHT take a percentage of the total that's taken? How are you all compensated for the effort that you're doing on behalf of friends?
Yeah. So I mean that's a good question. I mean, as I indicated before, in terms of our operating budget, we're self-funded. So the funds for our operations come mostly from the gains from the investments on the funds that we hold, but we also do have some admin fees, mostly around staff contracts and other sort of more administrative roles that we do. We do on occasion charge a grant admin fee. So that may depend again on the specifics of the partnership involved and when the size of the grant. But it's generally a small amount. That's not a major way that we fund ourselves. But but as you pointed out, we're a small team of about 5.5 people here. So so in order to do that work, there is but that's not, we don't generally apply for grants that support the organization itself. Again, we're applying for grants that benefit the agency partner in some way. So any revenue we would get from that would be a small admin fee.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I know you've mentioned this, in your presentation, but maybe if you want to elaborate slightly, we talk about a lot of projects. I think when people hear project, they think of something physical, on the ground, some sort of construction. And a lot of our friends groups sort of have what we call a soft infrastructure. It's programming, it's educational, interpretation. Are those things that in your mind would qualify for a partnership with NHT?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's one of my priorities to continue to advance Connect Kids and Ladders to the Outdoors, which is sort of encompasses a wide array of programming that I know many of our friends groups do on the ground, and they're supported by Connect Kids in a lot of different ways. So the NHT does have. We do have some funds that we use here and distribute to parks for Connect Kids and Ladders, so that there is an opportunity where if a friends group was interested in working with the park on a Connect Kids or a Ladders to the Outdoors type of program, we may be able to work more proactively together on funding that we have here on that. So yeah, no, I'm always happy to talk about. There's been a big focus on capital projects and when you say infrastructure kinds of projects, but programming and stewardship continue to be mission-driven priorities for the trust and for most of our agency partners. So we're always happy to talk about that.
Okay. I had a question that came in actually as part of the registration for folks, and course, it's slipping my mind in this very moment as we as we talk about it. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about the benefit potentially of having friends groups partner with another nonprofit that may not necessarily be associated with one of the state agencies. Is that something that is a benefit to you? You know, if we had a friends group wanting to partner with a nonprofit bike organization that wants to get more people biking in parks, they don't have an MOA essentially with state parks, but would a joint application be something that you all would be interested in? Is that a stronger application in your mind, or does it really depend on the partnership and how that plays out with park staff and the regional directors?
Yeah, I mean, I think that really depends on what the project or program is and what the partnership could be. I mean, our priority would be that we are aligning with our agency partners. But if there's, I mean, the bike library at Shirley Chisholm is a good example of this. I mean, this is we've sort of created our own organization there for that for that program to run through private funding. But where there are many programs and projects have sort of a wide variety of ways that they're being supported. So the more the better in that way. But again, I guess what I'm sort of really emphasizing here is that there's not one size fits all for how the NHT can partner with, particularly outside the universe of our agency partners. It's really that conversation about what the project or program is, and then what makes the most sense moving forward, and whether it makes sense for us to be a grant applicant or even to hold the funds, or, you know, that's all part of a conversation that would happen based on what everyone's looking to do together.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. I wanted to make sure everyone heard that from you. I think sometimes it's that conundrum from, like, you know, your high school or your college professor, which is like, it's an open-ended project, you know, write about whatever you want, which is almost more challenging than saying, here's the template of what I want you to do. And so I think what our takeaway from that, and what, you know, you would encourage friends groups to do, is think creatively, and really, you know, make sure that they're following their mission was to champion a specific site or a park, and try to do that. Now, one of the things that you have said to me in previous conversations before the workshop is that you sort of have a special relationship, if you will, with parks, and are able to help expedite a little bit of the project's construction or installation and those types of things. I guess cutting directly to it, do you feel like NHT can help ensure that projects are done more efficiently, more timely, in that they're executed in a way that it really benefits everyone?
Well, you know, all the capital projects that we support for parks, again, are implemented by parks. You know, we are just sort of we are a funding mechanism that, you know, so we don't do project implementation here. We don't engage in contracting or, you know, or anything like that. So I do know that Parks is very efficient in its capital program, you know, and it works really well, and projects that Parks undertake tend to get done. And we've seen that over the last 10 years of Parks 2020. And but we work very closely with the Parks team on projects that we are involved in. So, you know, it's just we do have a benefit of sort of constant and open communication, and a history of, you know, working together. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, I just want to assuage anyone's concerns. It's, you know, you're working essentially as a contractor, a regular contractor in a way with parks, and so you're a trusted person, and so it tends to make a working relationship a little bit smoother. So.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
A couple sort of random questions here. You know, you're affiliated. You're not affiliated. You work directly with DEC. If there's a friends group that has, you know, a formalized active agreement with DEC, can they work with you as well, or are we specifically talking about friends groups of New York State?
No, I think we're, you know, the fundraising and development is a little bit different with DEC, although we are working closly now with them to strengthen that part of our partnership. It's just for a variety of reasons. The agency has a bit of a different approach to this, but But we certainly can, if there are projects that are identified and the agency determines that it wants to work with the trust to implement some private philanthropic support for a program, and then the Friends Group is involved in that in some way, there's certainly no reason we can't all work together. There's not quite as many examples of that as there are with the park system, but it certainly can be true in DEC as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know another overarching goal of most of the state agencies, and certainly at state parks from what I've been privy to, is trying to advance DEI and ensure access to our park system and our public spaces for everyone. I guess, how do you feel like NHT is leveraging their power, your power, to advance DEI in the work that you do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a part of sort of the ongoing identification of priority projects and programs that are really very much focused now on the issues of access and diversity, and they, that sort of messaging and identifying opportunities for where we can support projects that do that, would be priorities for us as well. So we just stay actively engaged with our partners on advancing those. I think that even just the effort that we've been making more recently on transparency for the NHT helps to sort of engage with communities on a deeper level so that they understand we're another resource to advance those goals. And again, just our ESG investment strategy, I think that was an important element there to just ensure that it's not just environmental and natural resource mission, but that access and diversity and equity goals that, so much of our work is made possible through investment and work in that world. And we want to make sure we're being responsible in that way too.
Okay. 2 more questions. I promise I won't keep barraging you with these questions. Just talking about multi-use trail development, construction, rehabilitation, those types of things. Obviously, the trail or the group that's championing the trail would need to be associated with either DEC or state parks, which is probably fairly limited. But given what what you've said so far, do you feel like a multi-use trail group could apply if to connect with you all in some way, if it's the right project?
I think, it probably depends again on where the intersections are with our agency partners, but the work we've been doing in Western New York, I mean, there's a lot of partners in the trail work there along the Niagara shoreline, the Empire State Trail, the Genesee Valley Greenway. So we for the most part, those projects have been implemented with one of our partners, but there are instances where the grant distributions have gone to others who own the trail. As trail ownership gets complicated and varied and diverse throughout. So that's a little bit of a newer area for us. It's not something that we cannot do. It's just it in terms of distributing funds. Say there's one grant for the development of a multi-use trail, and there's multiple owners along that trail. It's grant fund. We can make distributions to other entities outside of our partner or statutory partners. It just requires sort of another level of agreement and discussion and that kind of thing. But that is, again, that's a little bit of a newer area. We're testing a lot of that out in our Western New York partnerships. So again, if there's something actively happening where there's already one of our partners involved, we'd be happy to talk about that.
Okay. I think we captured a lot of the questions that were sent to us. So, and when we provide the PowerPoint, I think we'll cover anybody's questions, and obviously they can reach out to you. The last question that I have before we sort of wrap up the workshop is, Sally, what can friends groups do for the National Heritage Trust? It's not just, us taking from you, what can we do, sort of in a collaborative relationship?
Yeah, I think most importantly is continuing what you probably already really do. I mean, it's part of your fundamental purpose, but continuing to align your priorities and your goals with what your park or site facility is working on. And then, and where we can achieve those key alignments, I think that's where we step in the best, because then we can make that case to funders about what, the goals and the benefits of a particular project or program. So just continuing at that level to ensure that you're advancing, you're advancing priorities that you all share. And that communication is key for our work.
Yes. That's a great way to summarize. I mean, I feel like that's what a lot of our workshops have been about, that PTNYs have been putting forward, and that if Andy Fife is still with us, as a big champion for just positive communication between the friends groups, park staff, and really, sort of leveraging these opportunities that we've had with the 5-year plan as part of the MOA process to really think about what is your mission statement as a friends group? What do you want to achieve? Let's talk about that with your park community where you are, your site community, and work together to make it happen. So I think we're lining up these nice pieces of how to go about thinking about it, and then Sally's here offering these opportunities to help make it happen. So yeah, Sally, I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing that with us. So I'm gonna start to wrap it up if everyone's okay with that. So again, thanks everyone that joined us today. I hope you all learned a few things. I certainly did. I just want to send out a couple of reminders. First, check your inbox in the coming days, likely early next week, with a follow-up email from PTNY. It's going to include a recording of today's workshop, as well as a few additional resources. We will get the presentation from Sally that we can send along to you. It will have the 2021 annual report of the Natural Heritage Trust. And there's also a recent New York State Parks blog post all about NHT, which I thought was actually really phenomenal, with a bunch of great links in it. So folks can read through that at their leisure, and also link to your Facebook page and your new sign up form and those types of things. So that'll be a good resource. Again, if anybody wants to connect with Sally, we'll provide her contact information. And if anyone on the call or the workshop tonight wants to connect with PTNY staff or another attendee, let us know, and we're happy to connect you. The next thing I just want to mention very briefly is that our next workshop in this year's Friends to Friends series is coming up on Thursday, October 21st at 4 o'clock, where we'll be looking at best practices for board recruitment and development. Maybe not the most exciting topic right off the top, but certainly an important one for all of our friends groups. And so we'll be diving a little bit into that as well. So you can look for the registration link in the follow-up email. Last, or not last, but the next thing, perhaps most importantly, slightly self-serving, is just to mention that the 7th round of the Park and Trail Partnership Grant is officially open. It launched on Monday. As you hopefully are aware, this is a $1 million competitive grant program that is open to all friends groups who have active agreements with New York State Parks or the DEC. And it enables you to enhance preservation, stewardship, and maintenance of your sites, increases sustainability and effectiveness of your organization, and of course, to promote the use and recreation of the lands that you champion. So please check out our website for that. And we'll also provide a link to some more information. Please do not be discouraged to apply for the 7th round if you currently have an active grant agreement. It does not prevent you from being able to apply for another round. And finally, as we always say, stay in touch. We always emphasize this because we mean it. Reach out to PTNY if you have any questions, you're looking for resources, if you have an event that you want us to promote for you. And of course, if you're not following us on social media, please go ahead and do that. It's a great way to keep up to date with what's going on across state parks and New York State's outdoor recreations environment in general. So with that, thank you all for participating and joining us tonight. It was a great conversation, Sally, as always. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for taking the time.
Thanks so much, Will. Thanks for having me.